I'll buy the business and I'll just close it tomorrow. If someone puts on a LoopNet listing, which I think is one of the funniest things I ever see, which is if they put on a LoopNet listing, perfect for a 1031 buyer, what is the first thing that goes through your head?
Overpriced.
Overpriced, of course. So anytime you think in your head, this would be perfect for a 1031 person, right? It's overpriced. Like there's just, because I like to always say it is like, my first philosophy is we're targeting an investor client. Sure, there's the odd chance that you have an owner-occupant buyer who's willing to pay a premium because they don't really care about the return they're occupying for the next 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, right? The vast majority of purchasers, right? The vast majority of purchases or transactions that occur across the country are investors. So we must think with that lens first, right? So even the 4.6 million, when you're telling me that it's maybe worth 4.6 to 4.7 for a owner user, I would have probably offered 3.5 million.
No, I to clarify, I think it's worth more for an owner user. I think as an investor, it's worth 4.6 or 4.7.
Gotcha. So I'm just saying, like you were saying, it's worth maybe 140 a foot. You were saying.
Yeah, so 140 times 28. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my buildings. That's another deal I want to talk about. Between 165 and 170. Apologies.
165, 170. Got it. So 170 times 28,000 feet. 4.7.
It's my first time dealing with multiple deals, Henry. You gotta
No, it's okay. It's okay. What I'm trying to say to you is like, listen, one of the biggest philosophies that we talk about is, and this was a starter offer, something you just threw out at her, right? Okay, cool. Awesome. But first off, kudos. That's freaking great. I love that. That is a massive strategy that's underutilized. The only thing is that I would tell you that if you truly think it's worth 4.6 to 4.7, I would be offering less. I would be at 4 million maybe, 3.5, 3.8, right? Because the challenge is when you want to be able to do is have room for you and the investor's more likely scenario of purchase. If you don't have somebody who's definitely going to pay 4.6 or 4.7 like all day long, like no matter what, like that's in the bag kind of thing, I'm probably not offering it.
So the comps are pretty airtight at 4.6, 4.7.
So you can't offer that is what I'm saying though. If comps are 4.6, 4.7, I would always say I like to have room. I want to have 20% worth of room because like, look, don't get me wrong. Like, sure. Like, listen, I just like you understand like what the comps are in your market, right? I respect that. Any area in New Jersey as an example, which is like, I know like the back of my hand, you can bring me something where I know it's going to trade at 200 a foot. I'm still never offering more than 160. I need them to come into a striking range. Now, sure, they can counter me at 200 a foot or 180 a foot if that's what market is. Sure, they can counter me there. That's fine. But the whole purpose of my starter offer is never to be at market. I never want to be at market value with a starter offer because...
Makes sense. Some additional context for this is I'm working it with the City Plat team, so they kind of had the final say. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to that as a strategy moving forward. It makes perfect sense. Right?
Yeah, just being a little bit more aggressive. That's all I'm saying. The philosophy, right on point. I would just be a little bit more aggressive because also the cool thing is by being a little bit more aggressive, you can tell faster is this going to be someone who's motivated to sell or is this somebody who's kind of just like, look, you get my price, sure, I'm open to it, if not, no problem. And that's the biggest thing of why we submit these offers, right? Because I'm trying to speed through these deals as fast as freaking possible to know like, hey, am I spending more time on this or am I not?
Will I be able to get a copy of this call recording if so I can kind of, okay, I won't take so many notes then.
Yeah, whatever you need. That's fine. So that's that. That was that one. Any more questions about that specific deal?
No. Well, I guess one. So they listed it for 5.5. Someone may pay it. It's Raleigh, right? It's our capital city. Someone might overpay for it. Best practice is to follow up 3 months, 6 months. If it doesn't list, I mean, obviously if the sale goes through, there's no real relationship there, but
so how fast between your 4.6 and her counter to now listing it did that occur, by the way?
I offered 4.6 on September 28th, so right around 3 weeks.
Okay, so let this be a perfect example of this is a perfect example of someone who counters you that close, 5.2, right? Roughly. I mean, I know she said 5.
Right.
This is a perfect example of many times in the future of your career, you're going to have an example like this happen where you need to realize, like, think about this deal for I don't need to know the specific address for the purpose of this recording, but just from now on, I want you to think about something that will remind you of this deal going forward, where if you make an offer and they counter you within a ballpark, you immediately need to do one of 3 things. 1, pitch a listing. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get there, but it sounds like you're obviously interested in selling. Why don't we sit down and have a quick conversation to see if you'd be at all open to possibly listing the property for sale, right? Like, have a conversation immediately about listing the property, right? As a possibility. Now, 2, I would be immediately bringing this to 5 or 10 of my best investors in that marketplace. I wouldn't be waiting 3 weeks or anything like that to try to get some type of response. I'm calling literally same day I get a counter. I'm calling my 3 to 5 best VIPs or more in that marketplace And if you don't have anybody, call up the people who just transacted. Say, hey, I got this off-market deal. She's ready to go. She needs 5.5. Make sure obviously you include your commission in there, so you need that 300 gap, right? You pitch it at 5.5 to make sure you can get paid. And see what their feedback is. If they keep coming back at 4.4, 4.2, 3 million, 3.8, whatever, obviously it's not right there, and you have to go more towards the listing. But if they're coming in at 4.8, 4.9, 5 million, 5.2, you might be close. So
number one, pitch the listing. Number two, bring it to your investors. Number three.
And then number three is thinking about it like this. If she counters you at, not in this perfect example, but let's just say she counters you at 6, you need to innately think about it. It's like, okay, well, after I've done 1 and 2, which typically I didn't put those in exact order of how I do it. I'd probably do 2 first, then I'd go pitch it to my investors first, then pitch a listing. 3 is if she's absolutely out of her mind, leave it be and call her every 90 days. Right? Every 6 months. But this is why the starter offer is just so important, because it dictates how fast they move. Just the other day, somebody countered us, and like the price that they proposed to us was fantastic. And we made an offer lower just because I'm never going to offer them what they asked me for. And they came down even more. And I'm like, I'm in so much of striking range here that like I'm immediately calling my VIPs that same day. And we already have 2 offers on the deal that I know we can make at least 100, right? Maybe 200. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Awesome.
But the point is, like, I want to know fast, because I also, all day long, dude, hear the same bullshit you do, which is, oh, I want $6 million for my $4 million property. Okay, I don't need to call every one of my VIPs. I'm either going to pitch you the listing, right, because it's way overpriced, or I'm going to call you every 90 days, because it's like, it's just not going to be, it's going to be a complete waste of my time.
How does that go, pitching a deal to someone, specifically giving out the address or not, without an exclusive in place?
So I'm going to tell you this. You have been trained that matters more than speed. Most of the time, dude, a savvy investor is never going to go around you, because they need you. They need you. They want you to bring them five of these a year. The amount of times I've been screwed on a deal because somebody went around me because I gave them an address is less than I can count on one hand throughout the last 10 years of being in the industry. So it's like, it's rare that occurs, right? The only thing I'll tell you, because I've said this 1,000 times, is that the only thing I'll say real fast is I will never let buyer and seller have their own, like, have each other's contact information. That's my biggest no. I'll give out information all day long to a buyer and a seller of like whatever they want to see, but contact information is the biggest no. If you want to communicate, you communicate through me. Now, if we're a week away from closing, I could give a shit. But it's like at the very beginning.
Contract.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like that's just the cost of doing business. If that happens to you 1% of the time, 0.5%, whatever.
And by the way, I would even be thrilled that they screwed me now, because I didn't try to do business with them in the future, because they would probably screw me regardless. That's just my philosophy. I'm like, it's like, yeah. It's like, listen, I'm going to make you rich. If you just don't screw me, I'm going to make you rich. I'm going to find you enough deals where you'll make enough money. Why would you want to screw me? And if you want to, I'm glad you did it today. That's fine.
Yeah, learning lessons from that one. If we're, City Plat wasn't super motivated at 5.2, but I think potentially there are people who would get it at 5.2. I'm still working on that database and that list, but I'm a hustler. I feel like I can come up with some people and get access to some buyers.
I would even tell you also real quick, big thing that I've also learned, what we do now with a lot of people who want to list properties for a little bit higher of a price, we'll always say, listen, the only thing we ask, look, I know you're going to list it with somebody else, totally fine. Put my name in the exclusions. And we've got that a lot, where we've actually locked in an exclusion where, like, if we bring a buyer, they don't get paid, and we make our full 6.
One more time, please.
So essentially, like, okay, right? This exact scenario. You offered them X number, 4 and change, okay? They came back, countered you at 5.2. They go, now a few weeks go by, you didn't follow up, it is what it is. They now are going to list the property for sale with somebody else. And what I'll say is, I'm like, listen, I've already been working on 3 or 4 or 5 buyers. If you could do me a favor and do yourself a favor, because I don't want you to pay double commission, put my name in the exclusions in their exclusive right to sell listing. So this way, if I bring you a buyer, you don't have to pay them and me. You just would pay me. So now we've gotten many sellers agree to that. They're like, oh, that's smart.
You have the listing if you bring a buyer.
That's the point.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's all I care about. I want exclusivity if I bring my buyer. That's all.
Sure.
And I want to make my full 6. I want to make my full 6. Like, I'm always going to fight for 5 or 6 points every single time. Now, obviously, I say this all the time also in the trainings. I'm never going to lose a deal because of commission, but I will fight for my 5 or 6 points all day long.
And that's called an exclusion clause?
Yeah. Just all you have to do is in the listing agreement to say, if Henry Eisenstein brings a buyer, right? Because you can even tell the listing agent, like, look, I've been working with this guy Henry, I've been working with this guy Sam for many weeks now. He has a few buyers. If he brings somebody, I'm not going to pay you. And a lot of the brokers are like, yeah, sure, they're not going to bring somebody, no problem. Little do they know that we work our asses off for it, if the deal makes sense. Next thing you have on here is another listing I'm trying to negotiate. She says it's not the right time, and she's trying to sell the business as well. owner occupant had originally toured for acquisition. You want to give me a little bit more background?
It's a beautiful property. It's right next to a couple college campuses in North Carolina, in Raleigh. They've been a family-owned business since 1965. They have a very heavy industrial, and there are possibly some environmental concerns with that. It'd be a phenomenal place for a multifamily redevelopment because it's basically walking distance to a couple campuses. We toured it for acquisition a couple of weeks ago. It's a heavy lift. It would probably, the deal just doesn't pencil at anything remotely. She said she's looking for offers in the 5 to 6 range. So I try to pitch the listing because we're not super motivated to go after it at anywhere near that price. Again, I understand what you said about basically offering a low ball the first time around. I said, if you had $100 million, what would you do? And she's like, I would sell the business, I would sell the building, and basically I'd retire. So I'm meeting with the business broker today to get a feel for maybe what that could trade for. That is not my area of expertise. Her main holdup in selling is she doesn't think she can sell the business. And I don't know enough or provide enough value right now to tell her that yes, she can. But essentially, if and when that gets solved, I'd be in a position for the listing.
Sure.
The question is really, can she sell it? And if so, how quickly?
In the 5 and 6 million range, that's just for the property, correct?
Correct. We did not discuss a number for the business.
Okay, understood. So a couple things, right? So whenever I hear owner occupant, I always like seller leasebacks. It's one of my, obviously it's a great strategy to make great money. Obviously, many other factors, like what's the price per square foot going in this at 5.5 or 6 million?
This was the 140, give or take.
Oh,
it's about 40,000 feet. Yeah.
40K feet. Okay. Yeah, 6 million, 150 a foot, 5.5. Okay, gotcha. What's market rent there?
A little hard to find, because it's a heavy industrial use kind of in the middle of the city that's been going on for a while. I talked to a couple of brokers. I was at a CCIM this week. I talked to our company about it. I wouldn't feel comfortable underwriting it much more than 10, if anything like that.
$10 a foot. Okay, so let's just say we can get 400 grand a year triple net. Does that sound about right?
I would say, I'm not sure. I would say the market is $10 triple net, give or take.
That's fine. I'm just saying, let's make an assumption for a minute, okay? So 40,000 square feet, $10, 400 grand a year triple net. Now, 400 grand, what do you think a cap rate wise this could trade all day long? Like every day?
All day long, I'd say 7.5. All day long? Yeah, 7.5.
Okay, great. So I would be making an offer of like 8.5, maybe 9, and putting it out there and just saying like, listen, like I know you want 5.5, 6, but I have an offer right now of like and just put out there at a 9 cap. Maybe you could probably do 4.5 million or something like that. Send out an offer, but with the lease terms of her signing for 10 years, 4% increases a year. Get her to sign a nice long-term lease on this thing. The reason why we structure it this way is, one, we're price anchoring. This is a big reason why I like to lowball offers, okay? And everyone calls it lowballing. To me, it's not. I'm being serious because, to me, it's like, because I want you, to be really serious for a moment. It's like if an investor called you up and said, "Hey, I want you to offer 4.5 million on this deal specifically." You call an investor, pitch them this deal. They look at the whole thing. And they say, "Listen, our best price is 4.5 million. Would you offer it?"
Would I present it to the seller?
Yeah. If Blackstone said, "Hey, I would offer 4.5 million for this deal with these terms," would you offer it? Of course. We're making very conservative assumptions that for sure I can probably sell this deal for more money based on these terms, right? That's what I'm doing. But I'm price anchoring her. That's what I do with every offer, right? Our starter offer is for price anchoring purposes, which is why I was mentioning the lower pricing on the other one. Because I like to price anchor at a price which is like at a duh all day long and twice on Tuesday where we could sell this property. Where if I say too high of a number and I go in with her and say, hey, you go in at the 7.5 cap or a 7 cap with, a leaseback situation, the problem is that now you have to perform at that, right? Which I'm not saying is not closer to market, sure, but I want to not even bat an eye of even the possibility of not being able to perform. For a fact, if you got her to sign a 10-year lease with 4% increases a year at 400 grand, 9 cap day one, you're selling that deal tomorrow.
So one variable that I should mention, she offered this info, and again, trust but verify. She said the most, based on the way the business is, the most she could do a sale leaseback for is $20K a month.
Respect it loud and clear. I understand. So look, again, these are just examples, but
sure.
in her situation, the fact that by the way, this is like a telltale sign of like, it's not, her business isn't as great as it sounds. Like, it's like, okay, so what are you profiting? Like 60 grand a month, right? Like you're making 700 something thousand a year because you're paying, like you want to pay less than 1/3 of your income, your net income for rent, right? That's which is a very ballpark, baseline of a number. So it's like, okay, if she's only making 700 grand, like it's not like these businesses have sick multiples like fucking SaaS companies, right? She's not selling it at a 30x multiple, right? So her business is maybe worth 1 to 2x, right? Of net income, of net EBITDA, right? Her business might be only worth 700 to $1 million anyways. right? Unless she's got,
Right.
unbelievably strong government contracts for the next 3 to 5 years, it's probably not worth a lot more than that anyway. So it's like even offering her $5 million for everything isn't even that crazy.
It's not. I mean, so originally when I had, so I sent her a mailer and then I followed up and we had a phone conversation. She said she was in town, a week from then. We could tour the building. I said, is there any kind of pricing guidance? And she said, well, we've gotten offers 5.5 to 6. So we couldn't come anywhere close to that, which is why I didn't bother submitting, especially knowing that I was going to try to get the listing.
Keep in mind, no matter what somebody says in the past, that could have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It could have been a bullshit. You don't even know what those terms are. They could have been offering $6 million with 5% down with seller financing for the rest at 2% interest only. You have no idea.
It's a good point. And that was the reason I called her back was, hey, I wanted to learn a little bit more about those offers and why you declined them. She said it just wasn't the right time, which is, vague.
Exactly. Right. Which, by the way, is a vast majority of the time. So even though they might sound like, oh my God, I could never pay that today, right? Like, look, these were typically the last few years when interest rates were 0, right? And they were paying 1 or 2% interest and they were offering stupid numbers on everything. That being said, today it might only be worth $4.5 million. But presenting an offer now because maybe she's now more prepared and say, hey, and I have a buyer who would buy the business and everything right now for $5 million. Now knowing hey, it's probably worth in that range regardless, you can make some money.
In terms of next steps, Nikita, who works over at City Plat, I'm not sure if you've had the chance to talk with him. He's phenomenal. City Plat's a pretty small organization, right? It's like me, Graham, and 12, 13 more people. He said he would want to offer, let's call it mid threes.
All right. I like him already.
So let's say he's a buyer, right? Of course. Tactically, I could come up with a list of people who have recently bought industrial property in Raleigh, or I could shop it out to brokers, or sure. I wish we had this conversation before. I was at CCIM in Raleigh this last week. But in terms of next steps, I can get him to submit an offer. I can talk to a couple people and say, hey, pricing guidance is 4.5.
Well, look, number one, it's not. I would never say pricing guidance without actually knowing what pricing guidance is. But I would say 100% of the time, make an offer. Always. Like that I will say that for the rest of my life. It is never a bad thing to make an offer. I don't care at any price as long as it's legitimate. 100% present the 3, whatever, 3.5 or whatever the number is, perfectly fine. And then try to get a counter and say if we were willing to include the business, which by the way, I want you to understand something. When I say include the business, because look, I'm not claiming to be a business broker. I've sold many liquor stores, laundromats, car washes, hotels, but random ass businesses, none. Right, I've been a part of a few sales, but I've never been the lead point on those. Right, I've been mostly the real estate side of that. Okay, just to be super clear, I'm still looking at just the intrinsic real estate value. So if she's willing to sell the business and the real estate together for $4.5 million, I'm just going to close the business tomorrow. I don't really care. Right, I'll buy the business and I'll just close it tomorrow because I like to buy it at less than real estate total cost. Because by the way, most people overvalue their business drastically. So very, very, and the real estate, every asset they own, they overvalue, right? So that being said, that's why I'm just saying hey, if you know the property itself is worth X, right? Then sure, then you can say just for everything, right? Or if you want to just start with the real estate, that's fine. But overall, you can't really lose if you just try to buy, again, we've had some situations where the guy's got, a 300,000 square foot warehouse and he wants to sell the business that owner occupies in the building and the real estate itself. And I'm like, okay, well, you got 300,000 foot warehouse. I'm like, if I could buy the warehouse and the business total for $30 million because that's $100 a foot, it would be a steal. So and then he's like, oh, well, I'll sell both for 40 million. It's all of a sudden, the property itself is worth probably 50 or 60. So it's that's what I'm talking about, right? It's where overall, in other words, the real estate's fine.
Yeah. So in other words, her main problem right now is she wants to get out of the business. She's not dying to. She just doesn't want to pass it off to her kids.
Sure.
But she wants to get out of it. So by offering her, a price anchor and not a low ball, which I'm stealing that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
We can take both problems off of her hands, essentially. Sure. So
listen, it's about solving problems for people.
So why don't I talk to our guy internally, see if he will run with the deal at 3.5 if we got it, and then let's kind of see what she comes back with.
Sounds good.
And so if she does counter, we'll have that conversation, and it'll kind of be a cost benefit. And if she doesn't counter, I'm the kind of person who likes to kind of think about the solution and then get some feedback. But that being said, since we're on the call, what would you suggest if there's no counter?
The problem is the only reason why people don't give you a counter is because they don't know what it is worth. So I like to provide value in that same sense. So look, if you want to connect her to the business broker, fine. I think that could be helpful, but I would talk to the business broker first and say listen, I want to help you get, no matter what this sells for, I want to help you get the deal, right? That is my intention here. I'm not here just to try to help me out. I want to help you try to sell her business. So if we can work in tandem, because I think I already have a buyer for the real estate, I think we can work in tandem here and just be upfront and clear about it. So it's listen, I don't know what you need from me in order to support you in trying to get her business sale, but like her real estate, her property's only worth maybe $3.5 million. And I would tell them that, like, her real estate's only worth $3.5 million. She said she's declined offers of more than that because the only reason why is because she doesn't even know what her business is worth, right? So trying to just, not negotiate, but like work with in tandem the business broker to try to help get this woman a fair and reasonable, like all day long price versus being overzealous, because a lot of business brokers will be like, oh, just like a lot of real estate agents, let's list it for $5 million and see if somebody buys it. No, that's not what I need right now. I need you to tell her an aggressive number that we could sell it tomorrow for. That being like, because like most brokers are just on the lens of listing everything, right? Working in tandem with this other broker to try to work, because like her problem needs to be solved first, which that business needs to be evaluated, right? She's got to probably spend some money to have it appraised, right? So like there's going to be some things that she's going to have to do in order to get this sold. But it sounds like if she gets a reasonable idea of what it's worth, she will come to the resolution like, hey, like I actually can now sell the property. Because it sounds like she's stuck here, and the only way to get past where she's at right now is understanding what the valuation is.
So she needs to be motivated to move the business. And, as I mentioned, she's not like in a huge hurry necessarily, right? I mean, she spends half her time in California. She spends half of her time here. It's a conversation I probably want to have with her. Like, how motivated are you to move? And, hey, I talked to this business broker. He's a friend of mine, a little white lie, but whatever. Hey, he'd like to get you an offer so you at least know what it's worth. If we knew that we could get you some offers, would you be totally opposed to that? Right? Something like that.
Exactly.
And then that kind of segues into the conversation of maybe we get a fair valuation. Maybe it's $1 million. So we offer 4 or 5, or, maybe I'll drop it in the group chat or email you before I submit an offer, but
for sure.
Something like that. So figure out kind of what the business is worth.
Because you have to solve for the problem first. Because if you don't solve the problem, you're going to keep making offers on a piece of real estate and she's going to keep telling you no. When in reality, if she just knew what her business was actually worth and had a very clear idea of it and felt confident in that number, then you can probably sell the real estate, no problem.
Okay. So we want to get her to talk to the broker and say, hey, I would appreciate, sales it up a little bit. I'd appreciate if you talk to him so at least you know what it's worth. So that way you have some context, and you can try to get some money.
I was saying the next question on your email was on the verge of getting my first listing, like we already talked about. What are some basic ABCs that go along with that?
Yeah. So this guy's selling an owner-occupied gym. He's willing to stay there. He's willing to move out, whatever it is.
The gym?
It is. So it's 25,000 square feet of gym retail, let's call it. And then 10,000 square foot of swimming pool facility.
Okay. So total is like what, 35, right?
Correct. Currently, there is a small PT facility taking up about 10% of the space, 3,000 square feet, paying $20 a foot. But other than that, it's all him, his gym, his business.
He wants to close down.
In a perfect world, he'd retire, but he's open to selling and he's open to staying.
Sounds like is he selling the business?
That's what I mean. He's open to keeping the business open. He's open to, selling it, whatever.
Well, I mean, look, a fast, easy, simple solution is a leaseback situation. Then let him figure out his own business sale by referring it or whatever. But at least this way he can lock in a decent leaseback deal and get a nice investment. 1. 2, any listing. This is like for any listing anybody gets anywhere. I and my team will immediately call the closest 3 to 5 similar types of properties and try to get an offer of any price. I don't care what the number is. I just want it to be real. And I want to get, because my intention when it comes to trying to sell any property, I don't care if it's listing it or off market or anything, is that we want to look at from the lenses, I want to close the feedback loop as fast as freaking possible, right? I don't want to be sitting there with my hands up going, I don't know what this is worth to an investor. I want to know like this, how much this is actually worth to the closest 3 to 5 or the most likely to purchase this property. What is this property worth, right? So I would call the closest 3 to 5 gyms. I would call the closest 3 to 5 even retail property owners who have gyms in them, right? So you're calling I guess 6 to 10 people in the local area and saying, hey, this property is going to be listed for sale. Here's the details. What's your best price?
For the real estate specifically.
Or both. If you're talking to a gym owner. Yeah. And maybe you end up calling people from maybe one town over because maybe they want to open up a second location. So those philosophies work at any market for any asset. I don't care what you're trying to sell. Literally, whether you're going on CoStar, you're going on Rihanna, Crexy, whatever, you look at the last 12 to 24 months of transactions who's bought something similar, call them up and see if they'll buy something else. Yeah. It's just like, it does not have to be complicated to find a buyer for any product. I don't care if it's even a business. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with some crazy heavy manufacturing company, it's a lot more complex because finding who recently bought something similar is hard. A regular retail property or even a gym is a lot more simple.
Yeah, for sure. The ABCs, if you just kind of refer me to something, it's probably not the best use of our time for us to go over like purchase and sale agreements and listing agreements. But if you have any resources for that, And then I also wanted to touch on he's looking for replacement property because he has this massive capital gains hit and the depreciation recapture that's coming with it. So he's open to another owner user facility and or just a stable investment.
That sounds like a perfect opportunity for him to buy one of your overpriced other properties.
So obviously there's a potential for conflict of interest there. How much do you worry about something like that? Or do you just...
Zero.
You gotta...
There is a level to this game, which is presenting information, letting them decide. All I'm here to do is move properties. And at the end of the day,
Right.
I'm never the person who goes, this deal is unbelievable and you need to buy it, unless I'm also investing in the deal. Like, I want a piece of equity. That's the only time I'll ever be a hard sell on this deal we need to buy, because I think it's actually a great investment and I'm doing it with other people. If I just have another property that I want to sell, I will never say things like that. I just am a presenter of information. Here's the data. You've told me you would like to buy X type of returns or of X asset class in X location. Here's this that fits each one of those boxes. Let's make an offer. What's your best price? I'm never saying like this is the best investment since sliced bread.